Welcome back to the Garden with Joey and Holly Radio Show. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your day just for a little bit. Happy to have you along. Missing any of those coupon codes? Want to find out more about all the companies that financially support the program to allow you to hear it each week on your favorite radio station? The WisconsinVegetableGardener.com underneath the Money tab and Season 9 tab at the top of the page. Well, Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Michelle is a registered nurse and passionate home gardener, helping you grow food and find calm. She shares organic gardening tips, inspirational and practical tools, and resources to support your journey toward a productive and peaceful home garden. She shares this on her website, Michelle's Garden Grows. Welcome to the program, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day, not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here to talk with you.
So how did you get into gardening? Was it something you found early in life or later on in life, or did you working as an RN impact the decision to garden? How did all that come to be?
Well, I got started gardening later in life at the ripe middle age of 48, and that was just 5 years ago. And I kind of had some exposure to gardening as a little girl. Back in the 80s, my dad would periodically grow an in-ground garden with lots of boring rows and lots of Sevin dust, if you remember that from long ago.
Yep.
It did not appeal to me at all in those days. But I do remember going to my aunt and uncle's when I was a little girl, and they had this beautiful backyard garden. And I used to play and pretend like little children do outside back in those days. And I think that's when the seed was planted about gardening for me. But as I got older, I wanted to explore gardening, but life didn't really give me the time for it. And I did work as a registered nurse for many years in healthcare and stepped away for a season to raise my kids, care for family, help my husband with lots of endeavors. So I spent a lot of years pouring into other people's lives. But in 2021, life finally gave me a bit of a margin to start checking out gardening, and I realized I'd never had a hobby. So my husband got to work and helped me build a wonderful space in our backyard. And you were asking about the impact as an RN with gardening.
Yes.
I would say that my training as a nurse and working as a nurse definitely influenced my love for gardening, because I've always been drawn to science, and we know that there's a lot of science in gardening. I've always been drawn to caregiving and paying close attention to little details. And believe it or not, nursing and gardening might seem kind of different, but they actually have a lot in common. And things like nurturing life, whether it's caring for plants or people. As a nurse, and observational skills, you need sharp observational skills to notice small changes and respond quickly. And also the science, as already mentioned, and the impact of health. I noticed a lot of chronic diseases could often be traced to our lifestyles or to people's lifestyles. And, wellness includes not only nutrition and fitness, but also stress management.
Email anytime to Garden Talk Radio.
And I'm sure you guys are very well aware that research is showing more and more how gardening is so important to health, and time in green spaces lowers stress and blood pressure and helps with a number of different diseases and increases our serotonin and dopamine. So I would say that's how the nursing really ties into gardening for me.
That's really true. There's many benefits, not just from getting vegetables or flowers, but just the health benefits as well. And there's so many studies on that. So you grow in metal garden beds. Why do you grow that method and maybe not other methods?
Well, those are our main method of gardening, is with the raised metal garden beds, but we also have green stock planters, vertical planters, grow bags, and we do have an in-ground flower bed. But what really got us started with metal garden beds, because that's our main way of gardening, is that when we started gardening in 2021, we took some shortcuts, and you probably heard, I don't know if you've heard the phrase that the cheap pay twice.
Right.
And so We definitely paid twice because it took us a good bit of work and expenses to get our space in our backyard ready for to put a kitchen garden. And so we kind of took some shortcuts with the raised beds at the time. It was in 2021, and I think that's when lumber prices were really high.
Uh-huh.
And we used some untreated pine. And after 4 years, those pine beds, the wood beds, were completely rotting and giving us all kinds of problems. So we switched to the metal garden beds, Birdie's beds, and I would say the biggest reason is durability because, like I said, started gardening in middle age, and we're not getting any younger. And so durability is really important. We don't want to have to go back out again in 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, and have to replace boards and that type of thing. So durability, and I would also say they're very customizable. The beds can be organized in different shapes. One bed can be organized in 5 different shapes, so they're very customizable. And really, the aesthetics was really important to me as well because the style of home we have like a colonial style home, and we got the kind of steel gray, charcoal gray beds, and they really kind of make the space look like it's an extension of our home. And so I would say the aesthetics also. And you can also get really good soil control in the raised beds that you might not be able to get in in-ground beds, depending on where you live.
Now, knowing now what you wish you knew then, would you have went to the expense of buying like Western red cedar, or would you have went with raised beds 5 years ago when you started the project, buy once, cry once, and move on with life?
Well, I kind of thought, I think I would have considered going with those type of beds that you're talking about, the cedar, but yeah, that's a hard one. I really like both. I think I really like the look of the raised beds. Now, my husband tried to get me to get the raised beds in the past, but the ones he was trying to show me were these really shiny silver ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, no, those are too shiny. Don't want those. And so these are really like just very aesthetically pleasing. They're very matte, and
very
I just think
earth-tony.
What's that?
They have kind of earth tone to them. They blend in.
Yeah. They just really match our home well. Although I did tell him I would like the cedar beds as well back then, but he said too expensive. But
well, I
think they're both good options.
Tell us about your website.
My website. Okay, so I originally, just to go a little bit back to when I started gardening 5 years ago, I got into using Instagram at that time as well, and I started taking photos and videos of my garden, like you see people do, and I was just kind of doing it as like a little journal or whatever, and so I started with Instagram, but then I originally started my website because I wanted a space I actually owned to document, sort of like a hub of all I was learning. Because when I started gardening 5 years ago, even though I was 48, I knew nothing about gardening, nothing. And so I had to learn little by little. And as I started learning, I was taking videos, pictures, writing stuff down. And really the website was for a place for me to put all of this information, and it's still very new. In 2024, last year, a good friend of mine encouraged me to start the site, and she helped me get it going in the beginning. But then after that, with the help of my husband, I slowly learned how to organize it and customize it myself. And so really, michellesgardengrows.com is a collection of resources. It has all my blog posts. Doesn't have a ton of blog posts, but it's getting there, and photos and tips on seed starting, book recommendations, a monthly garden book club. I've got resources of, where to get native plants in your area, identifying garden pests, and even how to certify your yard as a wildlife habitat. So I'm trying to just build a lot of resources for myself and others. And I have my discount codes on there from brands I've partnered with. So it's really just a hub, a resource for people to be inspired and find links and resources.
That sounds like a very complete website. So you aid or help the leafcutter bees with a pollinator house. So how is that going? And I guess tell us more about leafcutter bees, what you enjoy about them, and would you recommend the pollinator house to other people?
Yes, certainly. I'm definitely not an expert in leafcutter bees, but I've been kind of experimenting and learning a little bit about them over the past few summers. And it's actually been a really fun experience. I just learned, I just released, actually, I'm learning about them, but I just released my leafcutter bees from Kind Bee Farms in early June, so about a month or so ago. And the females have been super busy building their cocoons in the nesting tubes of the pollinator house. So I got a pollinator house, and it comes with little leaf cutter bee cocoons. And when you open the little package that they come in, it's got like a little plastic lid that's breathable so they can breathe. Some of them emerge before you open it, and some emerge afterwards, like weeks later. But so you have these little tiny nesting tubes in the pollinator house, and after the bees start emerging out of the cocoons, the females go out and cut little circular pieces of your plants, just little pieces, and they start making new cocoons with those, and then building little cocoons for their young, and then they get really busy for about 4 or 5 weeks, and then it slows down. And a little bit about leafcutter bees is what I'm learning is, well, I know one thing, they're gentle. They're non-stinging and gentle. That's a big thing to know. And they're solitary, which means they don't live in hives like honeybees do. And what makes them stand out is that it's the way they pollinate. They're often called super pollinators, and that's because they have fuzzy bellies, sort of like a little pollen brush. And they zoom from flower to flower, and they spread pollen really efficiently. And my understanding is unlike honeybees, they don't groom the pollen off their bodies, so more of it actually gets transferred to plants, which is supposed to mean better pollination, especially for things like squash, cucumbers, and melons. And I definitely need help with that because I have a tough time with squash and cucumbers because of squash vine borers and cucumber beetles in this area. So I can use all the help I can get with those.
And the pollinating bees, they do overwinter, my understanding, right? So you can, based on the species?
Yeah, they're supposed to be able to overwinter, but it takes, there are some possibilities that could happen, though. I understand that they could get mold, and so you have to be very diligent to store them properly. Like I said, I did that last year, and I don't think I did everything exactly right the first year, so I wasn't as successful with that, but I did get a new order of the little bees this year. And I'm going to try that again and see if I have better have more success with it. But yes, you are supposed to be able to overwinter them, but you have to keep it. There's certain things you have to do to keep them clean and keep it stored properly.
Well, Michelle, we greatly appreciate the time and the information. How can people, again, find your website and find all your blogs and your Instagram?
You can find me at michellesgardengrows.com, and it's Michelle's Garden Grows on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as well.
Michelle, thank you so much for your time and your information.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely.
Have a great summer.
Absolutely. You as well.